that government has responded to economic crises is not working well in this current environment. And here's why I think that is the case. The two traditional ways, though sometimes both applied by the federal government, sometimes conflicting, are to either increase substantially federal government spending at a time of economic downturn, as we are in now, or to cut taxes and to attempt to revitalize the economy through the private sector by putting more money in the hands of consumers and in the hands of businesses to grow the economy and create jobs. First, with regard to the Keynesian economic theory of let's have the government spend more money. This comes from John Maynard Keynes. It's been a popular approach to government for the past 80 years, since Keynes, a British economist and professor at Cambridge University, first espoused it, and has been used in a number of economic downturns. The theory is a simple one and a workable one. That theory is that when the economy turns down, government spends money, oftentimes having to borrow that money to put into the economy to create jobs. The workers who have those jobs spend more money, causing an increase in demand for goods and services, causing an increase in the additional employment of others to create those goods and services, and the economy grows. The growth in the economy generates new revenues at every level of government, and then the money that comes in from those new revenues is used to pay back the money that was borrowed to stimulate the economy. The problem is obvious. Over the last 40 years, all of that process has been utilized many times, except for the last part of it, and that is the exercise of fiscal discipline in good times. And this has been a problem at every level of government, but especially at the federal government. And the reason, of course, is, and as Jerry very correctly noted, you have a discipline that is imposed upon you by law. The state of Virginia has a discipline imposed upon you by law. And that, of course, is that you have to balance your budgets in good times and in bad. It makes for some very difficult circumstances in Richmond, which we have seen over the last few years and even right now. But the good news about that is that as you work your way through those tough economic decisions, you are fostering the next economic round of growth. As you achieve efficiency in the public sector, just like families are forced to do, just like businesses, large and small, are forced to do in the private sector, that efficiency results in increased productivity and rebuilds and regrows the economy. The federal government has not lived by that discipline. And unfortunately, the amount of debt that we have piled up year after year after year is in and of itself having a tremendous drag on our economy. And it will continue to do so and get worse. Unfortunately, we are operating in an environment in Washington today where there is no projection, even after it's expected the economic recovery takes hold. And there are some signs that that is occurring right now. Even after it takes hold, there is no sign that federal government spending will get anywhere near to the point that they pay back that money that was utilized to grow the economy in the first place. And so, for this year, this coming year, we're expecting a $1.2 trillion deficit, taking in $3.6 trillion, taking in $2.4 trillion in revenues, spending $3.6 trillion, adding to the national debt. But looking down for the entire 10 years of our current economic circumstances and the budget projections, at no time does the budget projection of the Office of Management and Budget of the administration, and confirmed by the Congressional Budget Office, dip below $550 billion. Prior to last year, and by last year I mean the year just ended September 30th, prior to last year, our federal budget deficit had never, ever exceeded $500 billion. So when you look ahead 10 years and never see it go below $550 billion and end the 10 years with approximately a $750 billion deficit in that year, you know that this problem is not of a cyclical nature when it comes to the federal government. And that is the greatest concern that I have about the federal government's ability to continue to help state and local governments in difficult times. In 1995, we came within one vote in the Congress of doing what you all live under right now, and that is to pass a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. It passed the House of Representatives with overwhelming bipartisan support. It requires a 2/3 vote. It came within one vote in the Senate of getting 2/3 there. It would then have gone to the state legislature for ratification. I believe 3/4 of the states would have ratified it at that time, and had that discipline been imposed upon the federal government. And it provides for an exception in times of war and in times of national emergency, and can be overridden by a supermajority vote in the Congress, which would certainly happen in the worst economic downturn in many, many decades that we have just been through and may continue to see. Obviously, those people who are on the rolls of the unemployed, now at 10.2%, would say there has been no recovery at this point, and we certainly have a long way to go in accomplishing it. But the point is that unless we are fiscally responsible with our dollars and use them in the wisest possible way, we're not going to achieve that kind of efficiency and that kind of growth that is needed. At the same time, this national debt piling up, if we're hit with higher interest rates, is going to have a staggering impact upon the federal government, and even more importantly than that, on the credibility of the American dollar and our ability to continue to obtain the kind of credit that we have secured. That's why in this Congress, as in the last, I've reintroduced legislation requiring that the federal government have a balanced budget requirement, except in times of national emergency and except in times of war. That legislation has strong bipartisan support. More than I think more than 170 members of the House have now co-sponsored the legislation, members of both parties, and we'll continue to push for that. But I quite frankly think the federal government has a lot more to learn from you than you have to learn from the federal government. You are required to do this. It is something that is a good thing for your communities. It makes you make tough decisions. As one of you said to me just a little while ago, it makes you set priorities. It makes you determine what are your most important objectives. And when it comes to helping people, there are an infinite number of things that can be done, many of which are very worthwhile, but some of which go to the core of what local government is all about. And you have done a good job in Virginia. And it is why Virginia is recognized as one of the most fiscally responsible states, but also one of the reasons why Virginia is one of the states friendliest to business and economic growth. And in my opinion, it is the reason why Virginia is well below the national average in terms of the unemployment rate we experience here today. Not because you have all the money in the world to take care of all the problems you see, but because you know you have limited resources and you have used those limited resources wisely. This is